Hi together. So now we will have a very exciting talk. It will be together with Jan de Belder. Jan de Belder is the principal scientist and packaging technologist of Procter & Gamble. And you're going to show us a little bit about really advanced packaging and cross-value collaboration. And I'm really excited. Jan, it's your stage.
Good. Thank you very much, Thorsten. So, indeed, I will talk about our sustainability goals and the importance of cross-value collaborations. Back in 2010, we have been announcing our 2020 packaging goals, which was mainly about lightweighting targets, doubling the amount of post-consumer recycled resins. We actually need to double it from 26 kilotons to 52 kilotons by 2020, and also making sure that our packaging is recyclable, or we have programs in place to get them recycled. So that was basically what we've done back in 2010 already. We have been renewing those sustainability goals. As you can see, you can actually read them here, because as a company we want to grow responsibly, and we think through our global reach, the understanding of the 5 billion consumers we're touching, and our innovation capabilities, we think that we can make a unique difference, right? So I will talk mainly about innovation and the packaging innovations we have been doing. So what does Ambition 2030 means in terms of packaging, right? So related to packaging, we have been announcing that 100% of our packaging will be recyclable or reusable by 2030. We will find solutions, and we're working actively solutions so that no packaging will find its way to the oceans. And we also are heavily involved in completely new to the world recycling solutions, and I will talk one of them at the end of this presentation. Lately, earlier this year, we also announced this goal, so to reduce our use of virgin petroleum plastics by 50%. Right? So this goal on its own is already worth 300,000 tons of virgin plastic replacement per year. There have been many other commitments we're making, specifically in Europe. So this is one for Fabricair. We're focusing on less but better plastics. Right? So specifically for Fabricair, we committed to 30% plastic packaging reduction, which is worth 15 kilotons. And one of the examples, what we're doing here is to replace these type of heavy colored opaque PET pots, the Ariel pots on the left, by bags. Right? So we know it's a colored PET, so it's giving us currently challenges, and we're moving it now into a recyclable bag. So that's an example. Another one is that we also want to be fully recycled by 2022 on all of these products, and we're also increasing the PCR levels in all of these, right? So currently in these Lenore bottles and Unstoppable, we have up to 50% PCR. We're moving that to 100%. On these Ariel Dash bottles, it's recycled HDPE. Currently have 25, we're moving that up to 50% as well, right? So that's all about less but better. But we're also then involved into other systems like reuse, and that's an example I will give later on. It's going to be the Loop initiative, where we're also actively partnering in. Just to give it a bit of a spin, if we're going to replace these pots, it's basically our yearly volume can make a virtual bridge between Ireland and Canada, right? So that's the amount of plastics we're talking about. Good, so moving on, focusing on the first goal on reusable and recyclable plastics. I have a couple of items here which I think are very critical. If you think about single-use plastics, obviously there we need to make it to ensure that those packs are designed for recycling and that they're effectively being recycled. So that's the first loop. The other loop is definitely more on multiple use. And again, as said, I will give two examples at the end of this presentation. So let's first focus on single use and focus on recycling. So what needs to be true to really realize the circular economy? That's what I'm trying to put here, right? So 5 pillars. The first one, we need to make sure that our packs are designed for recycling. I think that's critical. And I will give you an example of what we've done on Lenore and the shrink sleeves. Second one is access to collection. So people need to have access to collection, which is kind of under control in Europe and North America, but obviously there are quite a lot of challenges, specifically in Southeast Asia and others. We need to convince consumers to recycle and help us recycling more the packs, right? So that's really a current outage, and I think through our brands we should be able to convince that, to convey, sorry, that message towards consumers. A fourth pillar is all about separation technologies, and that's where I will talk Holy Grail in a minute as well. Now, if you have all of those 4 pillars in place, we really can talk about high quantity, high quality recycled materials for which we need to find end markets. And again, putting it back into our packaging, as I was referring at the beginning, we have the goal of using 52 kilotons per year of recycled. It's a very important one, right? So driving end markets, it's key. So obviously, every of these pillars are coming with weaknesses, and one of the biggest items that currently are responsible to give the very low recycling rates is actually collection and sorting. We're simply not collecting enough materials. Basically, some of the recycling plants are really crying for more materials, right? So if I take the example of the best material which is currently recycled, which is a standard PET bottle, in Europe, the collection numbers are only 58%. In the US, it's 27%. But again, then I'm talking about the best recycled material in the world, right? So 58 is simply not enough. More consumers need to act and need to help us recycle all of the packages. Sorting is another big one, and I will touch on that one later on. So all kinds of weaknesses that really relates to the very low recycling rates of plastics in general, okay? Good, so in the next slides, I will talk about all of these pillars and give you a couple of case studies on all of these 5 pillars. I'm just gonna start off with the last one, going very quickly. We are doing quite a lot of programs, so I just picked out 2 or 3 examples where we're actually gonna load much more recycled resin. So this is now one of the latest items we have put in the market, VDMA, an HDPE bottle which contains up to 50% recycled resin. And those numbers will go up. As said, there's quite a lot of initiatives we're doing in the field of loading it more with recycled resin. This is another one, I think also a big one for Draft Fairy. Obviously, there are all kinds of awareness stories on beach plastics, but I think also important is that we're also increasing the amount of recycled resin in these PET bottles, so we're basically going to move from the current 2 kilotons up to 5 kilotons, right? So again, as you can see from all of these examples, really focusing on introducing much more PCR with a big focus here in Europe. This is another one, so these are now also in the market, bottles containing up to 100%, and many, many more examples, okay? So that was the end market story. So let's focus now on the other 4 pillars. The first one is design for recycling. This is the Lenore bottle. You also have a booth here if you walk in the pavilion, where we basically try to explain the story. These used to be very opaque colored bottles, which again, we know it's a challenge for recycling. So what we've done here is we removed the colorant, we replaced it by a shrink sleeve, but a very special one where we actually now put a perforation and asking the consumer to remove the sleeve, right? So this is gonna help sorting, because basically if you remove the sleeve, we're ending up with a naked transparent PET bottle like this, which is perfect for recycling, right? The good thing is, we got the Greener Packaging Award like 2-3 years ago. The good thing is that all of our competitors are following this approach, right? So if you go shopping in supermarkets, you will see a lot of perforated sleeved bottles out there, which is great, right? We also received the conditional approval from the European PET bottle platform for this concept, and that's also one of the reasons why many of our competitors are following. These are all the conditions. Again, I'm not going to go into details, but the trick is we are working with our competitors in order to come up with the same removal messages, the same icons to get it removed. So every time a consumer buys a bottle and he sees that icon, he knows that he needs to remove the sleeve. Okay, so that's one, I think, great example from cross-value chain collaborations. Another one is here. I think everyone is struggling these days with the definitions of what is recyclability, right? Recyclability, I mean, there are so many design guidelines out there. Every single country has design guidelines. Every retailer is now coming up with recycling guidelines. And guess what? Nothing is harmonized, right? So I think Recyclass from Plastic Recyclers Europe is a great tool to bring together the full value chain and to align on certain testing protocols, certain guidelines, and also tools to assess if your package is recyclable or not, right? So again, we were one of the first companies to get membership, and today we have more than 25 members, and it's actually growing as we speak. We're also actively involved in the collection through the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. So this is a CEO-led initiative where we trying to secure $1.5 billion to invest in areas such as Southeast Asia, with the main focus to install infrastructure, to innovate with new recycling processes, but also to educate consumers and governments, which is, I think, much needed. And next to that one, we're also going to do some active cleanups, right? So we have been founding partner. Our CEO has been acting as chairman of the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. You see, again, quite a lot of big names in there. Again, I think a very nice example of cross-value chain collaborations. Consumer education is another big one. Again, every single country is coming with their own recycling logos, which again is not easy for us as a global or regional brand owner, right? We typically produce bottles and we ship it across member states within Europe, so it's very difficult to deal with these type of instructions per country. And I will talk a bit about Holy Grail and the potential to make this one also virtual. So talking Holy Grail, right? So think about separation in automatic sorting lines, and I will explain in a minute what it is. I will give you a very brief introduction on Holy Grail. We have a full session on Monday together with Suez and Tomra, where this project will be discussed in much more details. Basically, we started with Holy Grail in the New Plastics Economy from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation with all of these partners, right? So I have been leading this project for like 3 years, and the idea is how can we bring intelligence into a packaging and how can I use that intelligence later on in the sorting step. We have selected technology for digital watermark integration, and as you can see here on the screen, for a consumer, there is no change. There's hardly anything you could see on the samples here. But if I just gonna use my iPhone, I'm actually immediately capturing the information or the intelligence out of this pack, right? And this is a very cheap camera, by the way, right? So it works. I can put it in artwork. I also can put it directly into molds. So that's basically the principle. So cameras can see this one as a multitude of barcodes. That's the principle. Now, as said, it gives you value all over the value chain, right? So for producers, there are benefits. For consumers, like I just mentioned, I can remove all of these texts and just limit it to the necessary information I need and just put everything in an app. So a consumer always get that information. Also for retailers, you name it, right? What we have been doing on Holy Grail is really using that intelligence for sorting machines. So this is just a standard sorting machine. You see that normally it works by means of near infrared, which has its limitations, right? So we're now just installing an add-on module with a camera system, trying to identify those codes, which is gonna help sorting out better the streams. That's really the basic principle. I can do things which I cannot do today, right? So making, for example, a distinction between non-food bottles, like these, and then, if this would be a PET bottle, food bottles, right? Identification of black packaging, right? No problem at all. Identification of monolayer pouches versus multi-layer pouches, right? So it opens a whole area of possibilities. And as said, we have been running this. We prepared samples together with Filigrade and Digimark. These are a couple of our samples. We put it either in the artwork or we put it in the molds. And this is an example of a PET bottle that has those codes. And we basically organized an open house back in May. And I'm just going to show you quickly a movie. So what you see here is a demonstration unit at Tomra here in Germany. You can see clearly there is a powerful LED light, white and red. There are camera systems in place as well, which is then detecting the items which are going through the belt, and this is running at target speed. So as said, this project now got closed within the New Plastics Economy. We are organizing a second open house actually next week, Tuesday. So if people have an interest, see me. We have brochures also here on the booth. And we are in the process of forming a much bigger consortium than the one you already have seen in the past, right? So currently we have more than 50 members. 20 big brand owners are already signed up, and 10 big retailers have signed up as well. So the idea is that you form that mega consortium. We're going to upscale the machine. That's also a next step. And then we are preparing for a test market, which is likely going to be here in Europe, right? So we're going to learn in that test market, and whenever everything is running fine, we can think about expanding it to other countries and other regions. So that's just in a nutshell, Holy Grail. Again, we're going to present it on Monday in much more detail together with Tom and Suez. The good thing is, we recently at Fabricair, we received 2 awards. The awards are actually also on that booth. So we got the award for driving the circular economy, that's one. But then we also got the award of the overall winner, right? So this is really a very active project and a very nice one. And I'm glad that I have been leading this one. And I hope we can enter into a test market very soon. Also, there are quite a lot of activities here at the K show, right? So Verstraeten in mold labels in Hall 5 has quite a lot of samples that contains these barcodes. So if you go there, you basically just scan it yourself and have a look. Tomra is here as well, Borealis and so forth. They're all having samples and they can explain more details about that one. So we have this permanent display in this pavilion, as I mentioned. I think it's just around the corner over here. And then I said we're going to talk in much more detail next week on Monday. Tuesday we have the open house, and I think I already mentioned it as well. So again, this is just an example of the Verstraeten booth. And during the open day, you also will see these type of cups and many, many more samples that we will run through the sorting step. Good, so enough about Holy Grail. We're also doing a lot of other collaborations. So this is another one. PETcore is the PET value chain. I established a group there called ODR. ODR is opaque and difficult to recycle PET packages. So the most important ones there are sleeved bottles, which I already talked, but also the opaques. So for the opaques, we are trying to find solutions, typically trying to find end markets for the opaques, right, which today are not in place. So again, full value chain collaboration, more than 60 participants and still growing as well. We have a subsection within PETcore, specifically on plastic aerosols. So that's really the big next things in PET world, plastic aerosols. And we have developed these type of plastic aerosols which are now made totally out of plastics, right? There are many samples on the market which contains, for example, aluminium valves here on the top, which again gives quite a lot of challenges for recyclers. Again, this is probably one of the first plastic aerosols that is made totally out of polymeric materials. Good. So I talked a lot about single use. Let's also have a very quick look of what we are doing on multiple use. I think everyone is aware we are partnering in the Loop program. So you see here a couple of samples, very nice packages. It's what I call the renewed milkman model, right? So they deliver these type of brands at your home. Not only our brands, but all of the company brands which are involved. And then whenever they're empty, they get returned, they get fully washed, refilled, and sent to another customer. So that's really about reuse. On reuse, we're also doing other stuff. So this is, again, a test market for ULE in UK and in the USA. So we are basically reusing these bottom parts, and we're just selling the refills, right? So again, it's quite a lot of activities going on reuse. Other collaborations, I think some people know PureCycle. PureCycle is a process where we basically, it's a dissolution process where we basically can remove all the contaminants and also the colorants out of polypropylene. So it's a process invented by my colleague, which is also over here, by the way. We have out-licensed this one to a company called PureCycle, and we are now, will bring this into the marketplace. So this is again the process. I'm not going to go into details, but this is basically what it is. And I have actually samples with me. This is a sample made out of carpets. So the black is basically carpets that just have been chopped up. We have taken it through the PureCycle process, and as you can see, we are ending up with very nice looking polypropylene, right? Near virgin quality, which we then have been injecting in these type of tubs, right? So these tubs you also can find back at the Millicom booth. Again, this is not only for us. We're starting up a first production plant in the US, and these are all the partners. Again, nice example. L'Oreal there, as our key competitor, is also engaged and signed up for the PureCycle materials, right? So again, I think very nice example. This is how what they call the feedstock evaluation unit looks like. It's now currently operational, and in 2021, the first industrial plant producing 50 kilotons per year will be opened in the US. Right? So again, these are items that we actively are working. And again, I also would like to highlight that tomorrow there will be a big press conference on PureCycle. So if people have an interest, it's going to be tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. That was it. So I'm not sure how I'm doing on time, and I think I just still have 30 seconds left. So again, thank you very much.
That's quite right.